Welcome everyone to our very first show of Lounging with REALPRO. We're very excited to bring this show to you. My name is Eduardo Marines, and I've been in the real estate business now for a little bit over 25 years, and we're looking to bring a lot of information to you guys, bringing special guests, covering many topics that you guys will be interested in. Of course, we're going to be coming up with topics that we come up with and eventually want to discuss, but we want to hear from you as well. So as time goes on, we're looking forward to your comments, to your emails, to your communication, to ensure that we're bringing information that you guys are interested in, because it's not just about us, it's about you guys. All right. So with that said, I want to take this moment to go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsor, Lumar Home Loans. If you're looking to buy a home and you're looking for a mortgage, whether it be residential, commercial, DSCR type loans, all of that, you can reach out to Lumar Home Loans at 1-877-LUMAR-LO. Again, that's 1-877-LUMAR-LO. Okay. So with that said, that being over, let's go ahead and take some time here to introduce our guests. Co-host, first and foremost, people know him as my brother, although he makes sure he says I'm his dad. Everyone has a clear understanding of that. Have with me my son, my partner, my best friend, Andre Marines. No tears, please. No tears. Andre Marines, who's joining us. Okay. Also, I have with me to my left, I have the gentleman that grants all your wishes when it comes to buying your home. It's in the name, as a matter of fact, Mr. Dwight Grant. Okay, a lot of experience. And right across from me, if I were Mexican, I'd be messing this one up all the time because I'll be saying orale, but it's Orali, who we have here with us.
Of course.
Wow. Exactly.
The cutest one. Thank you.
You already know she's joining us. So, again, welcome to all of you guys. I want to thank you guys for being here with us tonight. One of the things that I want to mention, the reason why we're here, we are all REALPRO agents. That's one of the things we have in common. Mm-hmm. And, I thought it would be important, especially if it's called Lounging with REALPRO, that we bring, the individuals for the very first show that represent the culture, what REALPRO is about. So I'm very excited to have you guys here. Thank you for joining us, Of
course.
And, with that said, I do want to go ahead and kind of go over what the show is about and kind of give you guys some insight. So first and foremost, Lounging with REALPRO, right in the name, it says it. It's about being laid back, being relaxed, talking about topics on a personal level, things, again, that, maybe could be a little bit touchy at times, but we have to, go ahead and cover it because it's part of our life, our everyday. We're going to be talking about, real estate specific news, the economy, political issues, market data when it comes to real estate, mortgages, new construction, all of that. We're even covering reality shows. So that's one of the things that we're looking to also discuss because, you see these shows, and I'm sure you guys can agree, when you look at these shows, you start questioning, like, is this for real? Is this how real estate really is? And it sends the wrong message. Let me tell you, a lot of it sends the wrong message.
HGTV.
I don't watch TV.
Oh, boy, you better start watching.
HGTV.
And staying in tune with that. And, of course, we want to bring in special guests, people in different areas, different arenas to come in. It doesn't have to be real estate specific. Maybe, again, just a topic that interests us. So, with that said, let's go on to Andre. Andre, what part of the show you think you might find more interesting? What part of the show would you probably feel like you want to engage more with?
Great question. Ultimately, I feel like I'm going to find the whole series very interesting. I feel like, all the topics that we're going to, discuss, the insights from the professionals that are going to be on the show. I feel like, there's going to be a lot of great content, that we're going to be able to provide on this series.
That was a politician response.
I was about to say that.
He has a
That was
rep.
not even a real answer. Come on.
Then I can't answer the question.
He wants to be politically correct.
Hey, no chat GPT, okay?
Right, exactly. I'm looking at that tablet over there.
No
I'll tell you that
ChatGPT.
tablet right there.
No, actually, I'll show you what I have.
Oh, he's got notes.
Yeah, I have the topics that we're going to discuss.
His ChatGPT is actively running. Well, we don't know.
That's cheating, okay?
We
have nothing.
That's not true.
His ChatGPT is literally listening to everything we're saying.
I just gave you a disclaimer. No ChatGPT.
Always.
That's it. He's way advanced. Okay. Microphone's on. No, but literally straight political response. Obviously, Orali, this is one of many shows I'm sure you're going to be part of. Tell me, what are you looking forward to?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know what to expect, though. It is what it is. I do like, I don't know. I
Listen,
do like
she's
talking.
here. Tell her,
of
I'm
course.
here.
I'm here. I like to talk. I like to give my opinion. So I'm
we need
excited
that.
about everything. I'm excited about, having
Caliente.
discussions with you guys.
Yeah.
Of course.
Give their opinions.
Of course. This
she's
is what
like-
I'm here for. I
She
don't
ready,
care.
she ready,
I don't
she
care
ready.
what I'm about to give an opinion, but I want to give an opinion.
I think,
Okay.
I
She
think
wants
we're
to
gonna
be
dub you.
heard.
Listen.
Exactly. About what? I don't know.
Again, we're looking forward to your opinion. Obviously, that's why you're here today. We understand that you're very vocal in many aspects, and that for us is important. We want to hear from you. So, whether it's solicitor or not.
Well, I mean, I'm just very interested to see where the show goes. Interested in seeing us talk about the market conditions, and as we portray it to the public, giving our insight, maybe canceling a lot of the false narratives that's going out there. You know what I mean? Giving some factual information, and also just having a light side of it all. Just to politic, talk amongst each other.
I knew I was just about to say that. Political response.
I'm political too.
Yes, you
Oh,
are.
man.
You
He's
are.
not calling me up.
But you do stand on business, so I like that.
He's not as political. But I will say this. I'm looking forward to testing the waters. I'm looking forward, to bringing the kind of topics up that, maybe might be considered controversial. I'm definitely looking forward to that. I understand that, a lot of times, especially when it comes to politics, we're not always going to see eye to eye. So I'm looking forward to discussing that. And of course, hearing what every one of you has to say, every one of our guests as we go forward, as we discuss, up and coming, news that we expect to, hear and come across in the future. Those kind of topics, being able to discuss them here. So
Exactly.
It's important that we get all sides of views, if you will. Or as Orali was saying, no sides of view when it comes to politics and her. But the point is that, we go ahead and cover that. So, again, very excited. One of the things I will say is this. I don't know about you guys, and you mentioned, hey, I don't watch reality TV shows and whatnot when it comes to real estate.
TV, period.
Oh,
Yeah, I just
Well,
don't.
we're not. All right, let's clarify this. It's not
So-
reality shows.
Right.
It's the home shopping shows.
Yeah.
Home shopping.
And the all that.
But you
HGTV
have
stuff.
Selling Sunset, Selling the OC,
Yeah.
selling this, selling
Selling
that.
New York.
I like the
Right.
drama on those.
Right? Oh, the drama. See,
I like it.
Of course you.
Well, that's what the show's about. The drama.
Of course.
No one really wants to see them buying real estate.
Exactly.
Selling
Nobody.
real estate.
But I got to tell you though, I for one have actually taken clips from there. I mean,
I have as well.
I've shared clips with the agents from there. I've actually found certain things very interesting. So I think that you can learn from those things, but then there's certain things you're like, that doesn't happen. Or some of it does happen. We're just not aware, right? So we don't.
And I think it's good to know different markets.
Right.
Like I like to watch international real estate, when they're buying and selling and renting. Even renting is big over it, overseas.
Right.
But just to see how other markets move, obviously we can't get in depth with it because they don't really show you the real. We're just probably seeing properties. But
Right.
as far as the transaction, the process, we don't get to see any of that because, as we know, a lot of those shows, the process is not legit.
No, absolutely not. I mean,
Or the favorite one I like is we're looking for a $400,000 house. We're buying a house for $380,000, which is leaving us room for $20,000 to do repairs. Where's this $20,000 coming from?
I don't know whether 20. I mean, hopefully they have it saved in the bank. But to that point, I mean,
We should have him right over there audit the show.
he's talking. I don't know if you noticed, but he's talking about a show that's probably 10 years old. Those prices are not around anymore.
Nope.
especially not on the shows I was talking about. Right. So on the news as of late, there's been a topic of discussion actually. New York Times wrote about this in Colorado. They're talking about the fact that the sellers feel like they're being overcharged on their commission, on the compensation, and that the agents are all in cahoots in trying to lock in these high commissions. So it's interesting because, there was this whole battle, with this class action suits and all that stuff that took place. And, all of a sudden, NAR decides to go ahead and make sure that in order to comply, they split who pays and how things gets paid, right? Because initially, for those of you that don't know, initially, the buyer's compensation was the buyer's, and the seller's compensation was the seller's representative compensation. So the compensation was always separate, right? Until at some point it became a standard of, hey, you know what? I want to include the buyer's agent compensation on this as part of a normal, a standard, if you will, right? So we would pre-negotiate that with the seller. We put that on the contract. So this way we're covered. And then all of a sudden it became a routine. And then all of a sudden sellers found themselves paying for both compensations regardless, right? So that was the thing. Then all of a sudden, time goes by and everything changes because the sellers get tired and they're saying, hey, we don't want to pay for that. But now they're crying, okay, well, we're still getting charged these high compensations, these high commissions, but here's the kicker now. They get, excuse you? That was not right on the microphone. So here's the kicker. The kicker is that they go ahead and they now have a buyer's representative sending in an offer that says, well, we want to get paid this too, right? So you already have a compensation that you're paying that perhaps is a little bit higher than norm. And then you have a buyer's agent who's bringing in an offer where on the offer, they have their compensation. And when you total it all up, you end up paying a lot more than you were previously, right? Because the argument was, well, we don't want to pay for it. And at the end of the day, if you don't pay for it, who will? Most of these buyers barely have enough money to put down for a down payment. And I can't tell you how many people come and say, hey, well, I want to go ahead and I want to put, the money down, but I want to use grants in order to put down the money, even though I may have some money, but I just want to use grants, right? So they're looking forward to coming in with as little as possible out of their pocket. Now, they go ahead and they present a seller with an offer where not only are we requesting perhaps, to cover the compensation for the representative, but also the closing cost assistance, right, for the buyer. So now the seller's looking at the listing agent's compensation, the buyer's agent compensation, and the closing costs. Now, you may think, well, we can go ahead and really look at these numbers a whole different way. Well, they used to pay all this. Well, they used to, but the reality of the matter is that even though at the end of the day, these sellers, okay, are claiming that, well, that we're being overcharged, compensation, whatever the case may be. Perhaps, and this is one way I look at it, because if I were to say maybe get compensation and I felt like, hey, we may be negotiated, I as an agent might say, I want to go ahead and, keep some of that compensation reserved to pay a buyer representative agent if possible. And then I'll ask the seller for permission. And there's a section in our agreements where we can indicate, well, you give us permission to negotiate up to X amount. But what happens when we don't? What happens when we don't pay that? Now we collect a higher compensation and we like it. And we like it. Right? So I guess my question to you guys, and I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to lean on to you, Dwight, on that one. Do you find that more fees or the fees are accumulating to a much higher total these days? Do you find when we go to a closing, because let's face it, when we go to that closing table, you see those numbers.
Exactly.
They're there, right? So do you find that, most agents that are listing homes these days are pocketing in a lot more money? Do you think that it's something that's happening across the board, or do you think it's isolated? You think maybe just, certain agents perhaps that are doing that? What are your thoughts?
I feel that it's certain agents, because honestly, after all this has happened, I haven't really seen a lot of compensation on one side. As far as putting offers in, I'm always going to put my offers in with my compensation in the offer. I'm not asking if you're offering commissions anymore. I'm not doing it. It's just going to go in an offer. Because a lot of times, as the listing, they already negotiated that, or they have already told their seller about that we may have to pay the buyer's agent. Because I know even if I have a seller that doesn't want to pay the buyer's side, I let them know, well, we're going to get an offer. They're going to ask, most likely. So prepare them for that. And when they get a good offer, they kind of, they'll, all right, I'll pay you. But I haven't really seen it too unfairly on.
Right.
I mean, have you seen like on one side is heavy?
I have seen it.
you do get, and this is what's interesting. I think if you become like a top listing agent and whatnot, I find that perhaps maybe the agents that are doing most of the listings these days that have the bigger bulk of it are probably a little bit higher than most. And I think that it's just a luxury behind it. It could be because maybe they're spending that much more to actually gain that business. So then,
Marketing.
to keep it going, exactly, the marketing, everything that goes with it. The question is it something that, we're going to start seeing eventually start kicking everyone in the rear? And now we're going to have a whole other issue about that alone, right? Because, again, this is the New York Times talking about this and bringing up these concerns from home sellers. So it's something that, it takes one bad apple, right? And then all of a sudden, a whole bunch are being spoiled and everyone is taking on these bad habits. And again, I go back to my first point where I was mentioning how initially, buyers rep were paid by the buyers representation. Sellers reps were being paid by the sellers. And all of a sudden, it became a routine until everything got combined. And all of a sudden, it becomes a big no-no. And there's a bunch of money involved because the suit, we had, different, certain companies, certain brands paying up to $50 million in one shot because they wanted to settle and avoid further suits. So, with that said, this could open up a can of worms, I feel. But we'll see where it goes. Currently, like you, I think that you do see a certain amount that it's kind of like I would say that red zone, if you will. Like you're getting towards that red zone, and it may not be deemed too much, but I feel like it's going to get to the point where it is.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you look at what closing cost credits are these days. They're nothing like they were way back in the days, right? Because interest rates were lower, the prices on homes were lower. So naturally, they say that the standard closing cost is anywhere between, say, 2.25%. Okay, that we can talk about percent, to maybe 3% total of the purchase price, right? That's typical of the loan amount, excuse me. So you're looking at that and you're saying, you do the math, more expensive homes, higher loan amounts, okay, greater amounts. Now, the average homeowner or seller in this particular case is looking at like, wow, well, I don't remember paying this kind of money. I don't remember getting this kind of money when I bought a house. Since when do we pay or sellers contribute this much? And then they feel like they're getting ripped off, right? So these are all issues I feel that, are going to eventually, draw attention, and it's going to create a whole nother area of concern. And, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Sides, though.
I mean, I feel like it's like the never-ending battle, right? The way I look at it is, no one really wants to pay, and everyone has something to complain about, So it's like when there's something that they don't like, they automatically want regulations or legislative remediation, and it's like. And it brings us to the point that you have brought up, which is why we're consistently changing the real estate business model here in the U.S. Whereas where it all started, sellers were paying their representative, and buyers were paying their representation, right? And that's how it should be. It makes sense. Other countries do it that way, but people want to complain, and now legislative bills pass that changed the real estate business model, and then now we're here today, and people again want to complain, and which is why we're kind of, we're on the verge of kind of like going back, which we actually did, because the bill passed where now sellers pay their representation and buyers pay their representation, and I think that what sellers need to understand, in today's day and age is that compensation is not fixed. And that's ultimately can be negotiated, and
it's always negotiated.
You know what I mean? And
always.
And I feel like that's how it should be, because controlling our compensation and our ability to negotiate is going to change the real estate business model. And it's it's gonna defeat the purpose of what we're hired for, which is to negotiate.
Well, Orali, are you worth it? Are you worth the
course.
buyer's compensation?
What you mean?
Why are you worth my buyer's compensation?
Because
if
I am
I'm
the
a
best
buyer,
out there.
what are you
The
gonna do
cutest,
for me?
the
Why should I hire you? What do you bring to the table? Because I can always go to a seller directly. Why should I go through you? What makes you so important?
First of all, I'm cute. Let's start there. Second of all,
Good point.
I'm
Good point.
Second of all, I'm not gonna let my clients get ripped off. I'm just gonna make sure you get your money's worth. And I think nowadays that's very important. I have seen it. I just saw it where agents be doing everything just to get that check, and they be ripping off their own clients, and it is what it is, unfortunately.
It's another great point.
And then I just, it truly shows your character because, like he said, it's negotiable. At the end of the day, you can take advantage of people, especially if they don't read, if they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So it truly just shows your character as an agent, your honesty. And I think that's something that you will always have in me. I'm not going to let you get ripped off. It's just what it is.
It's true.
Right. I mean, I know you count every penny. Trust me.
I do. Everybody knows it.
Everybody
My clients
knows
know it too. I do.
And I feel
count every
that,
penny, yeah.
you're not going to let compensation get in. When you're working with a buyer or a seller, the goal is to sell the property and for someone to buy a property, everyone leave happy, right? I'm not going to let compensation get in front of, or in mess up someone's dreams of home ownership. I'm not going to do that. And I tell my clients that everything can be negotiated and everything can be worked out.
Correct.
I understand you see these numbers and you see this document, it gets you nervous, but for the most, that's my job. Yeah. All right. And once you say that and they understand your worth, and once you start going with these clients and they see on the first showing, they're going to see your worth, and they're going to see how well, what I bring to the table as far as I know the property. I'm going to tell you everything that's good about it, and I'm not going to hard sell you on any property.
Exactly.
I always tell them the property is your purchase. You have to live in this, not me.
Correct.
So the ultimate, decision's on you. And now I always say, I'm going to give you my reservations of this property, good and bad. I'm going to tell you about this property. Now, once you tell me this is the property you want, that's it. I'm fighting for you,
Right.
no matter what I think. You know what I mean? And get you the best property and the best price. But that's what I feel is how you have to show your worth these days. You have to show that you're definitely going to be there for that client. You have their best interest at heart, and you're like Orly said, you're not going to screw them.
Right.
You're not looking for just the dog because they can smell that.
Yeah.
When you're just looking for the money.
Oh, absolutely.
They
for
can
sure.
smell it, right off the bat, like, okay, this guy is not really thinking about what I need. He just think about filling his own pockets.
Exactly.
Now, you're not an inspector, but you state the obvious. You go in
Yes.
there, and anything you see, you're like, hey, look, I've noticed this, I noticed that. This is why I feel this may be of an issue for you. And if they say, look, I'm willing to go ahead and do it, obviously, there's that obedience part of, the fiduciary duties that you have to obey and obviously move forward and follow through with your client's request. So absolutely. So again, I think we can all agree that right now that it is a shifting, market when it comes to, even compensation and whatnot. That's shifting every day. It's kind of like it's molding into its own animal once again. I think that everything goes through a cycle, right? So there's the quiet after the storm, and then it starts building, and all of a sudden you got a whole brand new storm altogether.
Yeah, once everyone gets comfortable with it,
Exactly.
and now we're moving forward, and here comes something new.
Exactly.
I feel like this time we didn't even get to get comfortable though.
No,
Yeah,
no.
I know, that's true.
No, we didn't. It was like literally hit.
Right away.
I remember,
It's just
when we first caught wind of this whole concern and everything, we immediately shifted, I think. One of the things that we've been very good at is if we see anything that could, cause any kind of liabilities, how do we protect ourselves? Because again, you see these brands, these big real estate brands that got hit, and they got hit hard, right? And they were the first. It was like, hey, there's money here, but there's also money there, and because they knew that these big brands had money, you had the lawyers going after them, and that became an issue. So that being said, we immediately, we're listen. Something, we can sniff something's coming up, something's in the air, something funky's coming around us. We're making adjustments, and that's important. So I have to apologize to the agents all the time, like, hey, this is concerns for liability, so we want to make sure we cover ourselves. And Mr. Policy, I think, could be my name at times.
I agree.
Oh, you agree?
Yeah.
Of course you.
I don't like all the papers that you be sending.
Hey, well, we have to. You know what? A lot of it, even when it comes to, say, even language barrier, right? To us is important. If we recommend anyone, a service provider, that is important. I mean, you're recommending someone. That someone does a bad job, you can probably be liable for recommending that person. So, it's just things like that we want to be careful with. We want to make sure we protect ourselves. At the same time, it's not even just about protecting ourselves. It kind of pushes us to inform the client. Like we get pushed to actually explain things to clients, right? So now they're like, okay, I understand. They're informed. And I think that the best decisions you can make is an informed one. So that's where I look at it. So, and speaking of which, we get a lot of people who say, hey, is now a good time to buy? Is now a good time to buy? I got that question at least 2 times today, right? And you hear that. So Fannie Mae is predicting that this year alone, the prices are going to go up 3.5%. And in 2026, another 1.7%. So altogether, you're looking at over 5% increase in the next couple of years.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, right? When you start looking at prices, it is a lot. So to a lot of people's question, it's definitely a great time to buy. We're starting to see interest rates finally go down. I mean, it's on the news, right? It's been on the news as of late. Inflation's going down as well. There's a lot of great things happening, I feel, in that sense when it comes to the economy.
Egg prices.
Egg prices have gone.
Egg
prices have gone down. Yeah, exactly. I think that was the biggest.
Really?
Probably like $2.
Well, yeah, it did. It went below.
Gas has been going down.
Egg prices went down. They're
$2
lower
though.
than the
No.
beginning of the year. That they're lower than the beginning of the year, but only slightly lower, and it's expected to continue to
I
drop.
just paid $6 for the
Right,
12 eggs.
but they're saying the average.
Well,
Just
eggs.
saying.
12. Well, a carton of 12 eggs. It was like $10.
Yeah, it's like $9, and
It
then
was
like
it
$10
like
at one
6.
point.
But
Yeah.
And this is how
who's buying
Realtor
eggs like
Talks
this?
becomes about eggs.
Hey, eggs
Realtor
are
Talks
very
about-
important, obviously, in
Hey,
America. I didn't
they are.
realize people really cared about eggs that much.
We do care, okay? We're trying to get fit
We are-
and healthy.
Oh
We
my
do care.
Eggs
That is the
eggs became the new steak.
Yeah.
You
Well,
were paying. Yeah,
My
literally.
clients are submitting offers with proof of eggs. So.
Seriously.
Showing you cartons
Seriously,
stacked on the wall.
Oh my God! No, I got to tell you. I mean, it's ridiculous to see how that's become such a focus point, right? But again, we're starting to see that come down. So hopefully, these are all positive news, things that will impact the economy and therefore put buyers in better position. I feel wages obviously will start to increase in a much more rapid fashion.
That's
I know
what
we
we
saw
really
that
need.
locally, right? We did see that locally, and it's gonna happen.
Well, they need to because as far as living expense to household income ratio is concerned,
It's a gap.
It's not making sense.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah.
it really isn't. I mean, even if you think about buying a home these days, we went from a one person buying a home to 2, possibly 3 people
Yeah.
buying a home. So that's something that we're commonly seeing.
Well, I mean, when you're looking at your average annual salary here in Rhode Island, in comparison to your living expenses, right, and what it costs, right, we're probably like on the top 10 probably unaffordable states in the U.S.
Right.
Because obviously our wage doesn't really compare to what it costs
With the medium income
for
in
housing.
Rhode Island, I mean, I believe it's 50-something thousand.
Yeah, we're only at 50,000.
That's insane.
That's it.
So again, that leads us again to that point where with these prices going up, you definitely want to go ahead and beat the price increases, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, jump in, take advantage of the opportunity, take advantage that rates are going down, so they're starting now to drop, and they're saying that they'll probably be around the 6s, and it's interesting because obviously I am a mortgage broker as well, right? And because I'm a mortgage broker,
Look at you.
well, the thing is that I go ahead and I've
That's where
done
you started.
comparisons, right? It's where I started actually. This business.
Before being a realtor, yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I was
there you go.
He
I
just
was a
went back.
mortgage originator for
Look at you
many
doing
years.
everything.
Yeah, worked with Bank RI, worked with Bank of America, Fleet before the merger. We headed the low to moderate income, the LMI emerging markets division and whatnot when it came to financing. So I do have some experience with that. And sitting now that I'm working a little bit more on that level, and you look at these the differences in the rates and what you get in return for doing a buy down. You really have to sit there and really analyze, because sometimes it's like much ado about nothing. You're looking at a difference of perhaps 0.25% when you look at what kind of a difference it makes for you today. It may not even be worth it if perhaps the rates are going, if they continue to go down and down the line they're in an even more favorable position, your refinance is no longer an issue, right? So with that said, I think look at the rates, determine whether or not it's even worth having to do a buy down or paying points, discount points and whatnot. See if it's even worth pursuing that. But it's definitely a better time to buy. Right now than it probably was a couple of months ago. There was a lot of uncertainties too, right? And with uncertainties, we tend to get a little bit concerned. Why? I feel the media blows everything out of proportion.
It's their job.
That is their job. Yeah.
How they get
That's how you
paid.
get the views.
Exactly. It's like, we got this issue, we just made it this issue,
Yeah.
right? And all of a sudden now they start creating skepticism. People start, getting concerned about, where the market's going, what's happening, what's going to happen with real estate prices, and they get scared, and it just takes one person. It's like, bad news travels a lot faster than good news.
Yep.
So depend on the news to give you information, and if it's good information, it doesn't go past you. You may have a casual conversation about it. You see bad news, your lunch break, you can't stop talking about it. Did you see what happened? Blah blah blah, and it goes on, and then all of a sudden it's spreading like wildfire.
Like they said, what he said, Charlemagne said that. Why believe the truth when the lie is more entertaining?
And you know what? That's right.
There it is. See, I knew it.
That's
like
right
that.
on. Yeah, Charlemagne the God said that.
Yeah, you got to quote where it came
Exactly. So he said that.
Charlemagne's
So again, it's true. And that's just it. Everyone's always looking out and paying attention to the bad stuff. Well, the bad news, what I can give you as bad news is that if this holds to be true, right, and Fannie Mae is on point, which they typically are. I think we've noticed a lot, throughout the years that they've been pretty consistent. Prices will continue to increase if the economy gets better. Because now there's all this talk about tariffs, tariffs, and the world, the United States is going to go down under, and we're going to be screwed. And there's all this talk, and again, a lot of scare tactics being used. But if you look at what's happening now, and I go ahead and I challenge everyone that's watching this show right now, do some research, go and take a look at Argentina. Look at what happened with Argentina's economy, and pay attention to what Argentina did. Okay, President Milei just literally transformed that country. It was a total 180. Okay,
in short time.
In a very short time, and within a year. All right. So take a look at that, because that should serve as an example, which, to my opinion, is probably the reason why he was on stage. I mean, obviously we're doing a speech, but why he was such an important part of that. He was on stage bringing a chainsaw to Elon Musk, because it's about what that represented and, what's going on. So I think that there's a lot of scary things happening right now where for a lot of people, especially if they don't understand. If you don't understand something that's going on, if you're stuck to your regular means of news and you just stay there, you're not going to get you're not going to get anything different. You're going to be concerned. You're going to be wondering, if the information you're getting is true or not, or you're just going to believe it's true entirely.
Exactly.
And really, it's all one perspective that perhaps, it's motivated, politically motivated, to get you to think and feel a certain way. So I say, go out there, do your research, go to different platforms. Don't just stick to what you see there. What's unfortunate too is like, especially when you deal with the Latino community. Unfortunately, the Latin channels from that are here locally, for the most part, they lean one way and one way only,
yeah.
and that is it. And that's unfortunate because you don't see both sides. So especially within the Latino community, there's a lot of confusion about what's really happening. And I think that the more research they're able to do, if they can't do it because their television media channels don't cover it, go sit down, take some time instead of going on Facebook or Instagram.
All the information is right there.
Go
It's out there.
do a Google search it up, look it up, get informed, learn about what's really happening, and then now you can make informed decision, and you can have reactions that are appropriate to what's really happening.
Or
right?
you can just reach out to us.
Or just reach out to us. We can talk. We'll talk about what's
Wanna be
happening.
a guest now?
Yeah, we can bring you as a guest. But it's important because at the end of the day, and you tell me what you think about this, Orali. Do you find yourself? Are you an overreactor? Or are you someone? Talk to me about that. What's your first? I would say, what's your first reaction to overreacting? What's that?
I always like to do my research, though.
Yeah.
I could be a little dramatic. I could overreact a little bit. But I like to do my research. I normally don't believe everything. I don't care who you are. I would normally do my research. So that has kept me from doing a lot of bad decisions. Thankfully. Thanks God. I can overreact. I'm not going to say no. But I always, at the end of the day, I do my research. Before I do anything, just research. Like he said, information is out there. You just need to take 5 minutes and read. And you're going to find out.
Right. And Dwight, where would you say right now, where do you find most of your news media?
I mean, for the most part, I definitely, with social media, I do not get my news from social media at all. But I definitely, I learned from you, always hit my Google News search, news site in the morning. And then once I see thing there, and I still have to go fact check that through other sites and research it. That's how anything that's always put out there from the news, I'm always going to do a deep dive and research it on my own, and also so I can get my own opinion once I know all the information.
Exactly.
You can't have an opinion if you don't know the information. You know what I mean? Because like you said, it could be all one-sided if you're only hearing one side. And I always believe you have to hear both sides.
Right.
Absolutely.
You cannot stay in one side because, if you're on one side, that's where your algorithm's going to go. It's just going to force feed that into your mental.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to see the other side of what they're saying. And then collectively you come up to a decision and base it on what you have found, and then you have your own decision and how you feel about it.
I mean, I will have to say though, with the change of administration, I feel like the dynamic of social media has changed.
Definitely.
The reason why I say that is because you're starting to not see any more of like that misleading media propaganda. For example, X has been labeled as a very reputable news source, especially because they have the community fact checks. And now who's implementing that now is Mark Zuckerberg.
Right.
You know what I mean? In Facebook.
Right.
So it's like you're
censorship.
starting to
Yeah,
see.
exactly.
Well, they're removing certain censorship. They're removing censorship and adding fact checks.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because it's the
And
wild,
that's
wild
important.
west on the internet.
Right,
I mean,
right.
everyone, if you could just say anything and it just get publicized and just get thrown out there, and then you have a mass people believe in it. It's like, you can't go by everything on social media. So that fact checking is very important and would be
Yeah.
very good because now it could back it up with sources.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Look on to the information. Look on, to different media sources. Get informed, especially when it comes to buying your home or selling your home for that matter. I think it's important that you get more than one opinion. And when you start looking at national averages, focusing on what the month of supply is and keeping an eye on that, I think would be a clear indicator because it takes a while for a market to shift, especially in such a big direction that, unless you have some pandemic situation like COVID, let's face it. COVID changed everything in the snap of a finger, like literally. All the market changed entirely. But other than that, on a regular market, you start seeing the shift, right? And you start looking at the month of supply, which right now locally we're close to about maybe 2 months of supply right now as we speak. And for those of you who are watching and not aware of what it means when we say month of supply, it's basically how many months would it take to sell off every piece of inventory that we have right now without adding any additional to the market. So right now, what we're saying when we say 2 months of supply is that if we added no more real estate to the market, within 2 months we'll have nothing else to sell based on the current sales that are taking place, based on the average sales that take place on a day-to-day basis. In inventory, correct. So that's what that means, and that's what it's talking about. So where do we find kind of like a middle ground, and where it's about anybody's market? When you start edging on to like about 4 months of supply, now it starts becoming kind of like a buyer seller, coin toss, if you will, right? And then once you go into like 5 or 6, now it's definitely a buyer's market. Now you're looking at the ability to be able to negotiate certain things. Back in the days, I remember we negotiated not just the price, not just the closing costs. We negotiated furniture.
Oh yeah, all the time.
I remember going into homes.
I bought my first house.
Yeah, well, I remember going and doing showings, and they'll have like this beautiful setup downstairs, the man cave, if you will, right? Call it that. It's got a pool table, large pool table, beautiful slate top pool table, and clients, wow, this looks great. Oh my God, I love the pool table. And me saying to them, don't worry, I'm gonna get this for you. Now you can't really say that much these days, right? Because there's so much going on, and so many people placing offers, kind of like giving away everything, including their children in some offers, right? Yeah. So that's basically what a buyer's market is. Now, as far as now just general news and general political news, if you will. As we wrap up over here, what do you guys think about the auto pen situation? You guys hear about that today?
No, what's the auto pen
All right,
situation?
so let me read this post on X by Donald Trump. The pardons that Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the Unselect Committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. Because the fact that they were done by auto pen, in other words, an automatic signature. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them. And the people that did may have committed a crime. Therefore, those on the Unselect committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me, and many of those innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for those documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent or the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. So,
here's what I think about
e-signatures.
What do you think about that?
In typical Trump fashion, I feel like, looking at it below the surface, I feel like he's just trying to expose the government. This is kind of like that lead way where, the initiation of opening that can of worms. You know what I mean? So that way that there's a bigger investigation.
Yeah, shine a light on
behind the scenes. Exactly. Shine that light. I think that's really what it is.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's more than likely not going to pass.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You know
Like
what,
sometimes I think he just throws things to see what sticks. But for the most part, I don't know if where you're going with this, but what I started thinking about is what he was saying with e-signatures and auto signatures and saying that this person really didn't know or even signed it, because with the e-signature or auto signature, if you have, like, for example, with ours, if they have access to your email, they can sign those docs, right?
Well, but hold on one second, though. Let's keep one thing in mind, right? When it comes to e-signatures, they look at your device. Yeah. And when you sign something on your mobile device, it takes the IP from that device. Yeah, and IP. So it proves that you signed, and that's how the signature certificate indicates who signed, right? So that's how that happens. Now, we're talking about a signature right now that's consistent and it's not traceable. right? And it's done by an auto pen
Okay.
system, right? And that's how
Maybe I never
all these
seen that
documents signed.
system.
And all of a sudden, this happened literally towards the end of his presidential,
on his way out.
It's probably
On
like
his way
his
out,
last like 24 hours, I think.
So at the end of the day, at the end of his tenure, this is when this happened, and all of a sudden, you see all these pardons coming out, and out of
He
nowhere.
did his whole family, didn't he?
Right. Well, he did his family. He did pardon his family. That was one of the things. Well, his family was pardoned for the most part towards the end. Hunter Biden was pardoned before that. But then, along with his family, was like everyone else. Dr. Fauci was in there. Liz Cheney was in there. There's a whole bunch of names that were thrown in the mix to be pardoned, right? And the crazy thing is, and the biggest argument is, these are preemptive pardons. Like, in other words, they did not serve not one day in jail in any way, shape, or form, nor were they convicted of a crime, but all of a sudden they got pardoned. Now,
For future
again,
crimes.
yeah. Now, but let's face it, though. Let's face it. Now, you know, we look at and we watch the news and they say, yeah, that's because they were going to get targeted and they were going to use law enforcement to come after them. Well, at the end of the day, you're innocent until proven guilty. They would have to literally
Exactly.
prove that you were guilty. And if they prove that you were guilty, then of course it's justified. And if you're justified, then yes, you do the time, right?
Yes.
Do the crime, you know, pay the time, right? So that's the way it goes. So that's just the way it is. So at the end of the day, what they did is they say, hey, they're going to come after you. There could be cause. There could be probable cause, and it could be proven perhaps that these people might be found guilty. Let's cover, because otherwise, why the pardons, right?
Yeah,
So
when it happened, there was a lot of questions
There
about
were.
why was he doing this? What was the
Well, I mean,
reason?
if you if you didn't commit a crime, why are you being pardoned?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right. So that's the big takeaway. Now the question is, can it be voided? Can it be overturned? Is it null and void? I don't know. I think it's gonna be tough to prove.
I don't think
It's
so.
not gonna pass. Like I said,
It's
he's opening up a can of worms, so that way that there's maybe could be a class action investigation.
Well, listen, I don't put anything past Donald Trump. I'll be honest with you. I think one of the things that I've noticed is the constant win. All I do is win. Like
PJ,
seriously.
is that Khaled?
Yeah, this is seriously. That's all you see. That should be, instead of the YMCA, I think that should be his new theme song. Honestly speaking, but so I don't put anything past him, because at the end of the day, things that you would question, it's like, all right, this ain't gonna happen, or whatever the case may be, and it does. And
That's what I always say. Like you said, don't put nothing past him. He's been doing certain things that people say that couldn't happen, and it has happened.
and it's happening. And
He's
it's
came
happening.
through with a lot of his promises.
He has, and that's one thing you got to give him.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of people that are screaming and yelling now obviously weren't paying attention pre-election, right? During the election period, he was very
He said he
clear.
was going to do.
Time and time again.
He's just doing exactly what he said he
Exactly what
was
he
going to do. So I
said.
don't know what the surprise is.
Again, it's like there's no surprises there.
Yeah.
This is exactly what he
Exactly.
campaigned
This
on.
is what everybody
That's what he
voted
said. This is
for.
what-
I
that's what you wanted.
appreciate someone that campaigns and actually follows through than someone
Well, I
that
believe that's what's
campaigns and
happening.
doesn't. And I think that's exactly.
The American people are tired of being lied to. They're tired of being used as, puppets and pawns for whatever the agendas that the government is trying to do. It doesn't even matter what party. It's pretty much, as you see when they're running, even with the Democrat side. I mean, I don't want to point sides, but it's like they're running. They promise all these things. They're going to do this for you. They come out the woodworks.
You
and
just mentioned Dems people. No, okay, continue. Stop. You better watch it, boy.
I know. All right, relax. Edit.
Yeah.
So, but people are tired. People are tired of being lied to. People are tired of being used.
They should be tired of not paying attention.
Well,
they should listen to what Trump was
But
saying.
it forced people to start paying attention.
Right,
now,
right, exactly.
Right? Now you want to pay
Now
attention.
you wanna
and
pay
you want
attention.
to believe what people are telling you.
Yeah. What happens with people is they get so caught up with life, or they just plain lazy, right? And they would rather, or this is a third. Sometimes the news doesn't benefit them, so would they rather not accept it at all. So even if the information is deemed accurate, hey, this doesn't favor me. So I choose not to accept it,
And
and I
block it
will
out.
go against it. I block it out. I'm not in agreement with it, And I feel like, when it comes to news, a lot of that actually takes place. People hear what's really going on, but they act like they didn't, right? And they become deaf to it. So, and then of course, when they hear what they do want to hear, what supports their current situation and their argument, automatically, they want to be vocal about it and expressive. Or they don't like what they hear, and now they start throwing, paint on top of your car, and they start shooting up your place as they're doing, as if they've done recently, to Elon Musk, which is not right? So, what's crazy? There's people actually taking their own vehicles and destroying them. And it's like, you're not hurting Elon Musk. You're not hurting him. You're really not.
Like, literally, your pockets?
No, that's actually a form of cancel culture, and everyone should be convicted.
Right.
Did we just get rid of cancel culture and now it's back again?
Well, we did to a certain extent. I mean,
it's hard really to control that culture.
Right. We got rid of cancel culture, I guess, in the verbal sense, but not so much in its action. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. I think that when you can always protest, right? Anybody can protest, but when you're actually attacking, a U.S. company, corporation, and you're coming, and it's not because of failure of their product. It's not because, they've actually produced something that harmed you, that they've actually manufactured, like if it was a drug that perhaps, caused you more health issues, or something that, went ahead and took people's lives. I get that. Boycott those companies, right? You should be able to freely speak about those companies, stand up against them, and say, look, we're not supporting these people. But when it comes down to actually, attacking someone for their political views and their stance, again, let's be honest. If you look at one side, one side is saying, well, we're not, attacking, we're not going to go ahead and stop Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And the other side is saying they're attacking, they're saying, but they've already made it clear that they're not going to do that. But this is what they want to say. They got you this, they got you that. And then all of a sudden now, as time goes on and the can of worms start getting opened up, you're starting to realize that there's a lot more to the story than we thought. Right? There's a lot more to the aid that was being provided. And of course, then they have to stop the aid on everyone, because they're like, wait, stop. We don't know which is which. We don't know what's faulty. We don't know what's good.
Well, they have to reconstruct the funding bill, and outline the funds at that point. So
I mean,
you have to cancel the whole bill.
Is ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, someone needs to look at the books.
and that's a big thing, right? It's like, where's the money going?
That's all that. Yeah. I mean, it's between the spending and all the things that are going as far as the deportation and all this, it's like a lot of these things have always been happening. Right now it's just more shining light on everything.
Right.
And also, one thing I don't like about, because growing up, I remember my stepfather always used to say, when he used to come home from voting, I used to ask him, oh, who did you vote for? It's like, it's none of your business. It's my political views. It's my decision. When did this new thing of this divide of you're on this side or you're on that side? Yeah. Well, it's like you should be able to be on whatever side and not have to feel a certain way about it.
Or fight anyone.
Well, to that point, when you really look at it, and you're saying one party doesn't like the other, I don't ever recall as a Democrat, when I was a Democrat, because I can speak from that perspective, meeting a Republican that totally hated Democrats' guts, that was coming on the attack, that was, talking bad, that, wished them the worst. I was seeing a video today. In that video, this lady was literally, wishing the worst onto this person that had a Doge thing on, and like a billboard. And she was like, I hope you die of the measles, and I hope that you die of this. And I'm like, holy cow.
This is getting
like, this is crazy.
Out of control.
Yeah, based on beliefs, like this is what you're wishing upon people. And it's like, you don't agree with me and with my way of thinking, and because you don't agree with me, I'm going to wish death upon you.
No.
Because how dare you not be in the same thought process, the same level with me, that I'm on the political, side of things. And that's a problem.
So let me ask you this. When do you feel this divide started?
To be honest with you, I think if you really look at, what's happened within the last, say, few decades, the Democratic Party have been in control of most of the last 3 decades, right? So, you hear a lot about, it's about the power, it's about the power, it's about the power. So it becomes a lot about that. Because let's face it, when you really look at what, the party of the people, let's call it that, right, really stands for, and you really start taking into account, when you are in control, if of the last, 16 years, 12 of them you're in power, why haven't you done, and by the way, you can't claim, because the Democrats have actually been in position that the Republicans are currently on, right, where they had the majority on the Senate and the House, and also had the head position as presidency, right? And when that happens, why weren't bills passed that favored their beliefs? If it's so much about, immigrants, about becoming residents, about getting your citizenship, why hasn't there been immigration reform? Like, why are we, requiring that people take years, spend thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, paying attorneys and whatnot to actually become residents? So, that's the one thing that I look at and I'm like, okay, where's that? Same thing can be said too about welfare reform. Why isn't that they've done something to create a reform where they allow people to get out of welfare in a way that doesn't impact them? Because the minute you start showing that you're making extra income,
they cut your
help. You lose your help. You lose your assistance, right? It's like,
it's designed to keep people in it.
Exactly. So, you've heard, I've heard the phrase many times, welfare is the new slavery. It might be.
It is.
Oh,
It
no,
might
it
be.
definitely is, because,
It is.
that's why they also say generations on welfare.
Exactly.
It's like the mother and then the next generation because it's like this is their life. They see, to them it looks easy, but it's keeping you in this certain box, right? You can't get a higher paying job. If you're looking for another place to live, they're only going to give you a certain amount for Section 8. And so they want to keep you in this particular neighborhood, And I think a lot of people, they just get comfortable with it. That's the problem. The comfortability is a sin in itself.
I think that for some people it is, you just get comfortable, but some people they truly cannot get out of it.
You get penalized.
Let's say you decide to go out, get a job.
You're done. Now I can't afford to pay for my house.
How about childcare? How about childcare?
What I make, let's say I get a job. What I get weekly, like that, I cannot even do groceries
now I'm in a
with
deficit.
that. And then I have to pay for rent. And then I have to pay for childcare, which is very expensive. I have a daughter.
Right.
And then I have to pay for all this. I have to pay for gas. I may even have to buy a car to get to my job.
Yeah,
and
better car.
So sometimes it's not that they're comfortable. It's just they cannot. The system forces them to stay there. It just...
Again, you're getting penalized, and again, looking at that. So where was the party? What has the party done? And again, they're going to say their hands are tied. And to that, I say this: when it comes down to even the claims that during the past elections were made by Kamala Harris's party, where they were saying that they requested that a bill be signed that was going to create all this extra support, for the border, and that it wasn't signed by the Republican. All of a sudden, here you have Trump, who's coming in and he's just passing executive orders. Nothing's being signed, and he just said. They said that you needed to pass a bill, this and that, and ultimately, apparently all you needed was a new president. In other words, what he meant by that is you didn't need to go ahead and get all this approval that you were supposedly seeking, and that's the problem with approvals. And for those that are watching, just to kind of wrap this up, because what people don't understand is that on these bills, it's never just one thing. It's a variety of things that they try to slip in there. So they got the one major issue, and then they try to sneak in all these few little extra things that
Just like when they put it on the ballot, you want the cleaner park. But with that, funding
Yeah.
comes a lot of other things.
Exactly. And so that's what happens. So a lot of the bills don't get passed because of that, because they're always trying to sneak one in there. And, you know, again, these
And they get
are right. These are orders. These are regulations that probably don't favor most Americans. And the Americans don't realize they're just telling them what the main thing is. So
Exactly.
again, it comes down to being educated. It comes down to being informed. It comes down to watching Lounging with RealPro. This is why we're here when we're talking about this. This is the point to the show, people. We want to bring the truth to you guys as we see it. Of course, we're always willing to hear your opinion and your takes on it and actually learn from them as well, because we may not always see it, you know, the right way. But again, like I said, we're always looking at different sources, looking at different information that's out there, as we advise that you do the same, so that you be making informed decision and not act so irrational in certain cases, perhaps even do things that could be deemed illegal. So definitely inform yourself, and more importantly, like, comment, and subscribe, all right, to our channel. Follow us, watch our show. It's going to be very engaging. It's going to bring a lot of information. If you enjoyed what you heard today, it's only going to get better. Looking forward to having you guys tune in to our next show.
I feel like Orali should close out like that, because I feel like they'll listen to Orali.
Oh yeah,
They probably will.
Orali,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, tell them to like,
close
comment,
it out,
subscribe.
Orali.
Close us out.
Over there to that camera. Right there.
Okay, I feel like a YouTuber now. Okay, like, comment, and subscribe. And this is going to happen every week, right?
This happens every week.
Please tune in every single week so you can see my beautiful face. Well, I'm not going to be every week, but I'm going to be very often, I assume, right?
Say so you don't
Yes.
get missed, so they don't miss you when you're
Exactly. And then so you can see Eduardo. And they're not as cute, but they're still, you know, nice people. So tune in.
in.